Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. I am your host, John Garcia. We've got a special episode lined up for you right now. It's another one in our Pacino-verse episodes. We did Serpico, which I loved, and that was another Lumet hard hitter. And now we've got another Sidney Lumet film followed 2 years after. But let's talk about who's at the table here. So we have our usual co-host, Michael Dixon.
How's it going, John? Yeah, really excited to talk about this movie, and always love a good early Pacino film. So
yeah, especially given where he went with his later Pacino films. The early ones I've heard are the better ones. And we would have Ryan King, but he has a quinceañera to get to. Ryan's turning 15, and we all want to celebrate for him. That's very good for you, Ryan. But instead, we have a special guest. We have our first international guest.
Big step for Afterthoughts.
Big step for us. We're going global, everybody. And that would be my cousin Anatol, also known. I also call him Tolik. He is a concept artist. He loves Al Pacino films, and he may himself be a grandson of Al Pacino. We don't know, but usually when he grows his beard out, he looks exactly like Serpico. So
there is a striking resemblance.
I am incredibly excited to talk about my potential grandfather, but one of my favorite actors, and this has grown to be one of my favorite movies. Alfredo Pacino, also known as Dunkachino, right, John?
Yeah, he's Dunkachino. Yeah, that's right. After Duncan got him,
as the kids say. Yeah.
Yeah, the kids, like, I'm glad you guys are talking about him, because most kids know him just as the owner of Booty Sweat energy drink, you know what I mean?
Right. Oh, yeah. That's correct.
First name Alpa, last name Chino. Yeah.
That's right.
And the subsequent Sidney Lumet film that we're talking about is, of course, Dog Day Afternoon.
You know something, people? You're going to be remembered the rest of your lives for the day you got held up and kidnapped.
At approximately 3 p.m. on August 22nd, 1972, Sonny Wurtzig and Sal Naturale entered the First Brooklyn Savings Bank and attempted a robbery.
Freeze! Nobody move!
The attempt failed.
There's no money here.
The police arrived. For the people of the neighborhood, it was a sideshow.
Sonny!
But for Sonny and Sal, the hostages, and the cops, it was a dog day afternoon.
It's all a whim. Rob a bank.
I had it planned! But you keep away from this bank or we're going to start throwing bodies out the front door, one at a time. All right, who has to go to the bathroom here?
I do.
The most you're going to get is 5 years. You get out in 1 year, huh?
Kiss me. They're going to give us anything we want.
Get some food in here, some pizzas, all right?
What I owe you for this?
It's all paid for.
No, I got it.
Hello, Sonny. You're on the air.
We're entertainment, right? What do you got for us?
Hallecker!
I ain't going back to that prison, Sonny.
I'm here with my partner and 9 other people. See, we're dying.
Don't, son!
Run.
Where am I going to run?
Algeria.
Algeria?
Yeah, they got to have a Johnson's there, so I'm going.
Al Pacino, Dog Day Afternoon, a true story.
Dog Day Afternoon came out in 1975. It's based on a true story of John. I always mess up his name. It's like Wojciechowicz, something like
Sure.
that. Yeah, why not?
We'll go with that.
Sonny. Yeah, Sonny. It's based on Sonny, okay, everybody? Well, we like Ellis Island, the guy that it's based on. We're just like, whatever, you're Sonny now. And it's about 3 bank robbers. Well, really, it's more like 2 and a quarter. I don't know. One of them just leaves immediately, who try to hold up a bank in New York, and it causes this big outcry. And then basically Al Pacino's character, Sonny, has to figure out sort of how to get out of the bank heist scenario without getting all the hostages killed by his very committed partner in crime, and at the same time not getting shot to shit by the police. And then the FBI gets involved, and it's all just a very tense orchestration of this heist gone wrong. This is my first time seeing this movie, And I suggested it because Tolek, you had told me if we ever did it, you wanted to come on and talk about it. And I was like, hey, this is a great time to just, let's do it. That'd be fantastic. And holy shit, this movie. It's like, I feel like I came out of Serpico and I was like, wow, there's no way that like young Pacino and Lumet could possibly do something that's better or more intense. And then I watched this and I was like sitting in my chair, just like, at times I was laughing because it was just so fucking absurd. And then
there's
to know
a lot
that
of
it's
comedy, right?
Yeah, there's so much comedy, but then it could just snap right back into the tension and like the drama of it and the real stress of the situation. And so, it just, I felt like it walked that line of tone and it was so well done in that sense. And like, yeah, Pacino's performance, the whole cast really, and then seeing Lance Henriksen show up in like a bit part too, I was like, holy shit, it's Bishop from Aliens.
Yeah, I was like, when is this white goo gonna spill out of him?
So many interesting like background character actors. You might not know their names, but you recognize a lot of these faces, the bank workers and the people in the crowd.
Yeah, I was very like everybody here I kind of knew roughly. I recognized. I just didn't know the name to put to the face. But it was really tense for my first go around. I was obviously a lot more engaged in the story and like wasn't as observant of some of the shots. I really did like the feel of it. I heard, at least from like reading up a little bit, I heard that a lot of it was improvised and that got like locked in as the script. And that leads like, I don't know, that lends really well to what feels like just natural dialogue. It did feel like a couple of schmucks walking in off the street and trying to rob a bank. And like, the franticness of it was great. So, I'm excited to hear what y'all think about it, hear from folks who've seen it, more than I have, the parts that maybe I didn't hone in on or that I appreciated subconsciously. So I'll go first to Dixon, and then we'll get to you, Anatoly.
Yeah, I think this movie is just fucking incredible. This is the second time I've seen it. The first time I saw it at Alamo Drafthouse, probably like 2017, 2018, something like that. And just like randomly went on a whim and was like, oh, they're playing an old Pacino movie. That sounds cool. And I was just completely floored by it. Haven't revisited it since then. And so I was excited for this opportunity to go rewatch it. And like, holy shit, it's just so... It's so incredible. I think Lumet is really one of the like underappreciated great American directors that we don't really talk about that much. And I think part of that is because like a lot of times you think about a great director and you think about his specific visual style. You think of like Kubrick, you can immediately picture what a Kubrick movie looks like, or Scorsese or different directors where you're just like, I know the visual style of those films. With Lumet, I don't think he necessarily has a visual style that continues throughout his movies, and I think that has probably led to him not being kind of viewed in as high esteem as he should be. But I think the thing that is the through point in all of his films, that everything is just so well done, and he kind of crafts the visual style to match the story that he's telling. But the thing that always stands out to me in his movies is the performances are just incredible. And I imagine that he has to be just one of the best directors to work with actors that we've seen in American cinema, like from 12 Angry Men to Serpico to Dog Day Afternoon. Fucking Network is just wild. He just gets these insane performances out of actors that are very good, right? They're always very talented actors, but like you don't see Pacino do something like this again for a long time, right? Like, he's still able to kind of maximize the talent of the cast that he has. And I think it's just so apparent in this movie. It's just so gripping from the first scene of the film. And it's just such a frantic story. And it kind of reminded me of, what it feels like sometimes it's just like a super stressful day at work. You're like, oh, I got to deal with these people over here and these people over here and make them happy and make this work and all this stuff. And, you really empathize with the bank robber because, he's just very stressed and going through all of these tensions. And I like that they make Sonny smart, but not too smart. It's like he's smart enough to know a lot of the things going on at the bank where it's like, oh yeah, I know there's an alarm in there. Don't fucking do that. Don't take all the bills out of there. Take most of them and slide a little envelope under there so it doesn't set off the alarm. Like he knows the ins and outs, but he clearly misses some alarm. We don't know what, but like the cops show up right away, so he clearly misses something.
Yeah.
And then throughout the movie, you're like amazed at his ability to kind of like tightrope and keep all these things together. And then he makes like some kind of dumb mistakes as well throughout. And it's just, it's such an identifiable character and such a fun story to see him go through all of this craziness. I can't believe this is a true story. It's just so insane. And then like, you know, you just see the influence that this movie has had on American cinema since then. It's like Die Hard is basically Dog Day Afternoon from a different perspective with like a more lighthearted attitude. You know, it's like the Hans Gruber's like plot is very similar to what Al Pacino is doing in Dog Day Afternoon. And there's just so many heist and hostage movies that have been built off of this structure. It's pretty incredible to go back to it and just see it all work together so magically. But it's just such a thrill ride, and it almost reminds me of like Uncut Gems. It's so anxiety driven, and then it just ends in this such a powerful explosion, and you're just on the edge of your seat the entire movie until it's over. And
Good Time.
Then it just ends. Oh, sorry, what was that?
Good Time.
Good Time. Yeah.
Yeah, the same director.
Yeah, I wonder how much the Safdie
Safdies.
brothers pulled from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, this movie is incredible. Anatole, excited to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I agree about Lumet. He doesn't have a very distinct like flashy style. He's very versatile, and I feel like he's probably hearing his interviews. He seems like a very humble, kind of simple person. He's not like this star person, you know, looking for attention, and that shows in his movies. But they are masterfully made. I mean, I believe, like I feel like this movie really is like a great example of like masterful directing, masterful staging, and an incredibly tight script that was also improvised. So actors got to shine. I watched a little bit behind the scenes, and I listened to the director's commentary. Yeah, there's a lot of very like neat, interesting kind of unique tricks that they used to work the script, because the story, I feel like it's very tight, and it's, you know, there's like a clear goal at the end of it is to get out of the situation, right? But what happens before you reach that end, there's a lot of improvisation. A lot of the scenes were like planned and structured, but the dialogue was improvised and agreed to with the screenwriter. So yeah, it's like a very good, solid understanding of, you know, like you said, how to get the most out of the actors, get the most out of the script. It's one of these contained like movies. It's almost shot entirely in one location, and but it never gets boring, right? I feel like it's an incredibly dynamic movie. Something like Serpico, like it is. I love Serpico as well, but it takes time over months or years. It kind of drags on a little bit, and this movie, it moves so fast. The pace is just so engaging, and one of the best Pacino performances, and also John Cazale, right?
John Cazale did a fantastic job.
We'll talk about him, but his story as an actor is just so amazing to be. I believe he was only in 5 movies. All of them were nominated for Best Picture.
Masterpieces. Like he did
Godfather,
Godfather 2, Dog Day Afternoon, The Deer Hunter, and
The Conversation, I believe.
The Conversation, yeah. So 3 Coppola films. Like everything he did was just incredible.
And then he passed away, right? Like really young. Was it like 3 years after Dog Day Afternoon was?
Yeah, like right after the filming of The Deer Hunter, he died of cancer.
Damn.
I think he was already sick when they filmed Deer Hunter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I also, I mean, again, we'll talk about this, but an incredibly kind of forward-thinking and movie, I believe, ahead of its time, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah, it was actually, so that's part of, you know, it leads into the movie starts relatively standard, like the way that it ups the stakes each time and it reveals sort of its different plot twists is very similar to the actual true story, in which people slowly found out more details about Sonny. And that initial intro, it's just, you get all the establishing shots of the city. You're just watching people like live their lives. Some random people like doing construction work, people walking. You see Angie. We don't know that it's Angie yet, but you see Sonny's wife, one of them. And then you get, just that slow kind of pan over to the car where Sonny and Sal and Bobby are sitting and talking. And then you get like the case, the joint and everything. And they go in and it's immediately, you're like right into the bank robbery part of it. Yeah. But like from the start, I feel like it's using the story beats just so well of what actually happened to set the tone. Cause you have, Sal goes over, puts the little note down. He's sitting there with the gun, waiting for the manager to finish. And Sonny's trying to write a check, and Bobby comes over and it's just like, I can't do it. Like, I don't think I'm going to do it. Like, immediately start doing it.
Just mistakes and fuck ups happen like immediately. The very first moves that happen are like mistakes, and it just keeps escalating from there.
And that was also like what endeared me immediately to the characters.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where like, I was thinking of like if Michael Bay had done a similar story, that he would be like punching down to these characters, be like, look at these fucking like knuckleheads, look at these idiots and what they're doing. And
are you referring to the
Pain
one with the rock?
Gain?
Yeah, Pain and Gain.
Yeah, I am. It is. I think he's on record calling them knuckleheads or something. But it is very much that like, there's I feel like Lumet empathized and understood the humanity in the characters and how to represent like that it was their first time doing this. I heard like the actual story like right before this that John or Sonny he watched Godfather before robbing the bank so that he could be prepared to do it. I was like, that just seems like the most average dude thing to do. It's like, I'm going to watch a movie about it and try to do it.
Amazing. And then Pacino played him.
Yeah. What a circle.
I think too, like when you see Sonny, and he's talking to the kid who was Bobby is his name. And he's like, I can't do this. I can't go through with it. And Sonny is like the kindest bank robber that has ever existed. He's like, all right, fine. All right. You can't do it. Okay. We'll get you out of here. Just go, and then the kid like is leaving and then stops and comes back in. And he's like, oh, by the way, there's a woman under that desk over there. And then runs out. And it's just like the fact that he would allow a co-conspirator to leave immediately because he's not up to it. It's like he's to some degree a kind-hearted person, to other degrees very manipulative, and treats the people he loves very poorly. But you get that kind of kind nature from him right off the bat, where you're just like immediately drawn to him. Like, wait a minute, this is not the kind of bank robber that I was expecting.
Yeah.
What an incredible character introduction. Like the kid Bobby, we don't get to see a lot of him, and he immediately shows the sort of ridiculousness of the situation. Sal immediately is shown to be sort of more serious and more dangerous, right? He's the only one who actually does his job well. He does what he's supposed to do. While Sonny, Al Pacino's character, like he's trying to be smart, but he's like in over his head. He's clever about like hiding the rifle in the box with the flowers or whatever.
Yeah, he
probably
does the
did not have access to a smaller weapon, right? But he tries to hide it. But the first thing he does is he's trying to pull it out. It like gets stuck. And that was
almost drops it.
It wasn't written in the script, but it just happened like this, and they decided to keep it in because it's like perfect to show him that he's like awkward. He's trying to be smart. He planned a lot of the things they were gonna do, but not everything, and almost every other step is a mistake, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, you get him kind of recovering and being like, I know where the alarms are. Don't do that. Don't do that. And you're like, okay, he's kind of regained control of the situation, only to immediately get a phone call from the cops across the street. They're like, I got you fucking dead to rights. Like, I'm staring at you right now. And everything immediately changes.
That surprise shot, too.
He keeps saying something like, moving right along. It's just going to be a few moments. And then he gets that phone call. He's thinking that everything is kind of going according to plan, despite, do they find out about the money before they get the phone call from the cops?
They find out that there's not much money in that because it's comedically timed. I think the real life story, they had $250,000 that they actually got. And so like here you kind of see, at least in the storytelling, I think that this points more to Lumet thumbing nose at like the NYPD, because it's like what in the movie it's like $1,100 or something like that that they're able to get because they got a pickup already, and then you have the army of cops outside that's like way more than $1,100 worth of taxpayer dollars there to like take these guys.
No cop in Brooklyn is doing anything else at that time. They're all there.
Before we move on, like too far from the intro, I believe that was just Sidney Lumet just driving around New York, filming by himself. These are real shots outside of a couple. Just regular people, and that gives that sort of realistic documentary feeling. And it has the only song in the movie, right? There's no more music. The only song is in the intro, and it's this.
That's pretty crazy.
So the song, it does establish the mood well. It does show the heat of the summer, New York day. Everyone's tired and sweaty, but it also does show like inequality in the city, right? There's like very rich people sort of partying and hanging out on yachts and in the restaurants and stuff. And there's this sweaty workers and the homeless people. And then smoothly transitions to our characters, robbing a bank, being desperate for money, and we find out their reasons later.
Yeah, it was Amarina by Elton John is the song that plays at the beginning.
And it's interesting that Elton John didn't come out at the time the movie was released, but then again, the movie touches on the sort of LGBT community, and then a couple of years later he comes out as gay, and that was almost like a perfect fit for his song to be an intro to a movie that I believe is an important cornerstone for the gay and trans community.
Yeah, and they also made to speak more to that documentarian style. The song is made diegetic by the end of it because like Sonny turns off the car radio and the song stops.
Yeah,
and it's like pulled right into the movie. You're like you're locked in now. So yeah, what a way to set a tone and your style.
Yeah, for sure. I love in the bank as they're going through and kind of dealing with all the initial things, getting the money and stuff, and realizing there's only $1,100 in there. Like I just love seeing the dynamic between Sonny and Sal as the movie goes along. And at the start, it's like things are kind of under control, and we think they kind of know what they're doing, and as it spirals beyond from that, like the relationship between Sonny and Sal, I think is pretty fascinating, where it almost turns into more of a paternal relationship between Sonny and Sal. He's like trying to be very comforting and assuring to him. He's like, he's never been on a plane before. And he's, all of these things that supposedly the character was supposed to be like 15 years old. But Al Pacino was like, you got to have John Cazale read for this. He would be great. And Lumet was like, what? Are you kidding me? No, like this is not what I want at all. And then Cazale read, and he was like, I cried when John Cazale read the part. Like I had to cast him. And I think it's almost more tragic as, like a 40-year-old doing it, because he just seems so underdeveloped and bashful and unsure of himself. And I think that's one thing that I would have liked to see more from the movie. Is like, okay, if you're going to cast like a 40-year-old in that role, I would have loved to see a little bit more backstory on Sal and why he was the way he was and how he got there. Very minor complaint about the film, but I think Cazale does it so well that he almost demands a little bit more of the spotlight in the film than he gets.
It's his improv too gives off those kinds of like he's undereducated or underdeveloped and plays to it, like the comedic sequence in which they're talking about getting a jet and where they want to go, and he's like, "What country are you going to fly to?" And he's like, "Wyoming." like just that moment, it's both hilarious and sad. Like
Lumet says that was improvised. I think in the script he's just silent. He doesn't know what to say. And then Cazale goes Wyoming. But yeah, like he is intimidating and he does his job well. He's like the only one the tellers and the police are kind of scared of. But outside of that, yeah, he's very like simple, kind of naive. Yeah, never flown a plane, is scared of it, and doesn't know that Wyoming is not a country.
He's such an interesting character because he is terrified and terrifying at the same time, right? And he has this underlying menace that you're like, I don't know when he's going to explode, but like I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. And that the scene when he pulls Sonny aside and he's like, "Hey, were you serious about what you said to the cops?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, about like throwing bodies out the door. Because I'm fucking ready to do it. I'll do it now. And you're like, oh man, like I was expecting him to say like, I can't handle that. Like, I'm not going to be able to do it. But he's just like, he's very terrified as he's saying the words, but he's like, I'm ready to do it. I'll fucking do it right now. And you're like, oh my God. Okay. This is like ratcheting this up to another level that I wasn't expecting it to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And the tellers talk back to Sal right away. Like when he's directing where to go, they're like talking back to him, talking about, we need to go to the bathroom. I have claustrophobia and stuff. But when Sal like gets nervous and yells at them, they're like scared. They're screaming and listening to him, and that will have a payoff later in the movie.
Yeah, and it's watching that relationship develop between these two, because I think in the true story as well, because I watched a documentary called The Dog that's all about Sonny, basically, that just talks about him, which that dude was like, he had like 20 wives or some shit. And I was like, holy fuck, like who is this guy? Yeah. But he talked about how like he was super stressed because at a certain point he realized that Sal was the antagonist of like this heist now, that like he had to mediate the cops and he also had to placate Sal because Sal was going to kill everybody. And that became like the balancing act, which, that gets touched on here, where like the FBI comes in and they're investigating the hostages. And then the moment that they leave, they're like, don't worry, we'll take care of Sal for you. And there's just that moment where Sonny's like, wait, you can see him get tripped up and he's like, I'm not going to sell him out. And like, I don't want to Sonny wants to do everything. He wants to save everybody, but it's just not going to happen at that point. And just that menacing. I loved the kind of back and forth, like tone of the bank tellers as they would slowly relax after a while and then snap back into being hostages. It's like you watch them learn like military tricks from Sonny and like, trying to do like the flipping gun.
Gives his rifle to one of the hostages to teach her how to do like presenting arms in the army.
It really bestows upon it that like, well, shit, now we're just here. Now we're going to figure this out, I guess.
There's definitely a lot of Stockholm Syndrome that develops over the course of this movie.
Yes, most definitely.
One of the funniest moments with that is throughout the movie, they keep getting the phone call from this creepy guy. I don't know who he's supposed to be somehow.
Yeah.
He got their phone number and he's calling and he's like, kill them all, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then one other time, the ladies that work, the tellers, pick up the phone and they start like messing with him and like mocking that guy.
Like making heavy breathing noises.
I love when Sonny answers the phone early on in the movie and he goes, WNEW, we play all the hits.
Yeah. That was because like right before then he answers the phone and just goes, we're gonna fucking chuck these bodies out, like whatever. And then it turns out it's like one of the teller's husbands.
Yeah.
I love that she was also just like, he wants to know when you'll be done.
Yeah, and that's where the humor comes from, is like all these kind of ridiculous moments. Maria, she took, she always takes extra time on her break. She was supposed, like, ridiculous moments in this seemingly very serious and potentially like deadly situation. There's all these like petty little things. So the husband wants to know when we are gonna be done, or like Maria is taking her time in the bathroom.
And her boss is like, I always tell her to only take 10-minute breaks. It's like she's
trying to explain
like explaining an inter-office beef to the guy who's trying to rob her. It's just
yeah, I think that like voice that calls in and is like, you need to stab all the hostages with your bayonet and stuff. I don't know if it's a nod to it, but apparently the mayor of New York, so like in the real story, Sonny had another lover come and visit him instead of Leon, the character Leon's based on, the person Leon's based on. And he immediately made out with that person, like in public, which was like a big no-no in New York at the time. And like with gay culture and everything that it was, how suppressed it was, you weren't supposed to do it. So he got a call from the New York mayor who was like, we'll fucking slaughter all those hostages to keep you from embarrassing our city.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit, that's fucking insane. So I feel like that.
I love the idea that the mayor is the one calling in.
Yeah,
and
exactly. It's just wild. That was, from the documentary. That was what he said that happened, and I was like, oh my god, that's fucking wild.
Well, should we sort of introduce that aspect of the movie? I don't think we.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about Leon or the wife situation, as it's called. So like Sonny continues to starts to make hostage demands. With the police, with this like sergeant who never knows what his guys are doing. He's just always yelling.
The police completely like shut down the streets around them. There's a lot of like snipers and everyone around. And there's one negotiator who is supposed to like talk to Sonny. And then at some point during this negotiation, they find out that Pacino's character has a male and a female wife, as they call them, and you can introduce them.
And that's when they're like, we brought your wife out, because the movie also treats this as a significant like twist of your
it's a great misdirect.
Yeah, because they're talking about go get his wife, and then you get a scene of the police going to his wife Angie's apartment and talking to her while she's picking up and putting down children in different areas and talking about the kind of person that he was and how unhinged he is, but it's not his fault and all this other stuff. And then when we actually see them bring his wife in, it's a man in like a robe clutching it, and he sees Sonny, and immediately Sonny's like, Leon, hey, that's my wife. And,
happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday. And Leon just passes out, and you get this intimate sequence in, it's like a barbershop across the street that they cleared out to make headquarters, where the cops have like Leon and they're trying to get him to come too so he can go talk to Sonny. And one of them, like Sonny's talking about Leon's talking about how he's transsexual. And one of the cops in the background just starts snickering and like tries, and he notices nobody else is laughing, and then he gets really like, "Oh fuck, I gotta stifle this." But it's such a subtle moment of speaking to like the culture at the time, where they're like, I'm sorry, you're what? We don't fucking care about that. We're trying to solve this bank robbery thing right now." And there's one cop in the background who just is like, "That's fucking absurd." Like,
to me, the movie very, very much treats this situation with respect. They're not in any way like overemphasizing it, making fun of it. But that little snicker that one of the police officers gives, to me, that almost like a little jab to the audience. Like if you're laughing at this in the 1970s, it seems a little bit ridiculous that in a serious situation, like it's not a laughing matter.
Yeah, exactly. Especially considering how serious the cops are at every other turn. That in this one moment they would break for something so, you know, personal, and it's not even their fucking business. But yeah, like at any point in time, they're just ready to pull guns out. And I thought that was the funniest part of the movie. And also the darkest part is just that they're constantly like, I don't know how many times the fucking negotiator has to yell, holster that weapon, put that up, like constantly to everybody. It's
the dynamic in the street is so insane. Like the cops are clearly not prepared for this at all and don't really, you know, understand how to approach this. I love when, you know, the FBI agent shows up to take over, and, you know, every scene in a movie like this, there's an FBI agent that takes over from the local cops, and he goes to Moretti and he's like, why didn't you wait to arrest them until they left the bank? And Moretti goes, mistakes were made. Just so that dynamic is hilarious. And then, you know, he's got cops trying to break in the back of the bank, and Sonny's like, they're fucking coming in the back here. Why can I trust you? And he's like, what? We don't have comms set up. I can't control what they're doing back there. It's like, you don't really know how much of that is Moretti bullshitting and how much of that is just the blatant incompetence of the Brooklyn PD, that they just don't really know what they're doing. And they have this, you know, hundreds of cops setting up this massive perimeter. And I love that, you know, it starts to get on the news and people start to come down, and he starts getting like an audience and a fan club out there that are cheering him on. And he's like really feeding the crowd and you know, walking around and strutting out in front of everybody in almost like a Mick Jagger type of like way. And it's just like the whole dynamic is hilarious. Like he's this hero bank robber, like almost like a 1930s gangster picture kind of a thing. And like, you know, this is in the 70s, there's a huge recession at the time, like there was in the 30s, obviously, when you have these anti-hero movies first become popular, and then you see a resurgence of them in the 70s. And I think it's interesting that you're seeing this, you know, this guy that, you know, probably, you know, wouldn't normally be approved by society, that is, you know, becoming, you know, getting like a huge local fan base that just like, hey, somebody's sticking it to the system and getting theirs, and like that's cool. And I all of that with the climate of the 70s and everything, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, you have this is kind of like an excellent follow-up to Serpico, given all of the police corruption that's discussed in that, and then just seeing like the excessive force used to come down on two bank robbers in like a really small bank too. It's very small. And I was like, at any point in time, I was like, they could just pull like a few of these cops away, but the cops themselves drew the crowds, and then the crowds, they got mad because the crowds were like on Sonny's side. But yeah, after that, like after the doors are kind of blown off of his sexuality, and it becomes, you know, like, hey, he's part of the gay movement. He's part of this subculture that has been oppressed. You get more people coming out, and that's when Sonny gets to play a little bit more to the crowds, to like television as well. And the news stations obviously have a field day with this. And they're like, he's married to this woman, and like they show the picture, and they're really trying to just like paint that contrast of like, this isn't a woman.
Yeah, the news is very invasive, very kind of sensational about this.
But Sonny also realizes that if the cameras weren't there, he would have been dead a long time ago, right? Which I think is another interesting dynamic at play there, where, you know, he starts shouting at the cops, Attica, Attica, over and over, and, you know, referencing the Attica, you know, prison riot from a few years earlier. There's a really good documentary about that, if you haven't seen it, called Attica, from a couple of years ago, where, you know, it was like the prisoners were being treated like beasts and just like had horrible conditions, and they took over the prison from the guards in order to like negotiate like a union contract basically with the prisoners. And then, you know, this went on for several days, and then the law enforcement just decided, fuck this, and they just charged in and just slaughtered dozens of people, both guards and prisoners. And, you know, this huge thing, like, you know, one of the you know, at the time, really blatant, you know, episodes of police violence in America that was really sitting in people's subconscious at the time. And so I think the movie referencing that was a really great idea, and a way for Sonny to kind of repel the cops. Just like, hey, there's cameras all around here. Like, you know, you want to do this again? You want to come in? And it's the New York PD too, right? It's the same people. You know, it's like, you want to come do this again? Come charge in here and start shooting? Well, you know, I don't think it's going to go very well for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what an incredible scene, and what an incredible performance. Deservedly, it became very like classic, and it's been parodied and referenced. And I believe it was also improvised. The Attica line was not in the script. I think one of
No, it wasn't.
an assistant director or someone in the crew just, that's what Al Pacino said. He said someone just whispered it to him, mentioned Attica, just find a way to talk about it, and he just improvised that line, and the crowd actually reacted to it. And yeah, what an incredible moment. And it does that's one of the indicators of how many layers of social commentary this movie has, from the police brutality to the trans rights and LGBTQ rights, and economic inequality and poverty and all this stuff. And that even shows that like the police brutality even shows kind of directly or indirectly when the first hostage that they release is the guard.
Oh yeah.
He has like an what does he have? Some kind
He
of
has
condition.
asthma.
Yeah, so he has asthma, and they release him, and the cops, when they see him, the first thing they do is they attack him because
they handcuff him.
They kind of, yeah. I mean, the negotiator does say that, oh, you said it's only women, and then you're giving us a guy, but when you see it, it does, trigger certain images and emotions, because like, yeah, the police are just seeing a black man and they just attack him immediately, and they have to, like, the other hostages have to yell out and say, no, he's a hostage, like, don't attack him.
Yeah, despite his obvious feeble condition, right? Like, he's clearly not one of the bank robbers. He's an old man who is suffering an asthma attack and is like barely able to breathe. And they just assume, oh, black guy, he's definitely the robber. We got to arrest this dude. Just crazy on its face.
And the cops are trigger happy. They are like eager to attack. Sonny has to like repel them, find ways to attract attention to that, and like, make sure that they're not being attacked, because he knows about what can happen, like looking at what happened in the Attica prison. And I like, to me, that also shows a certain inequality in the police force, because regular cops, they're disorganized. They're like, they don't really know what to do. They don't. There's not a smooth kind of like control of what they do. But when the higher ups and the FBI agents come in, they're very different. They're very intimidating, very serious. They're very capable, and by the end of the movie, you see how tricky and smart and kind of like brutal, but in a very intelligent way they can be. While the regular cops, they're just like a mess.
They're just brute force. Yeah. I mean, that just reminds me of, I've seen, I'm sure Tolik, you and I have both watched some of the police training videos that Red Letter Media has watched at some point. And so they still have like training videos to like the 80s and 90s where like everything is going to kill you at any point in time, and it's just meant to intimidate you constantly.
I'm sure they still play those.
Oh yeah. And I heard that like this became like circulated as training for negotiating hostage situations within cop circles, and it's just like, all right, like, which parts of this though? I want to know.
Yeah, what are the parts that you're telling people to do, and what are the parts that you're telling people not to do?
In his commentary, Lumet says this was the very first time something like this happened in New York, like a mass hostage situation. So yeah, they didn't have experience dealing with this, and yeah.
So they were just like in unprecedented territory with these cops.
yeah. I mean, I guess the prison was like outside of the city, but at least that's what Lumet said.
Yeah.
I assume that they would have also compartmentalized the prison as like, these are subhuman people that we wouldn't have to normally negotiate with. So we're not going to need to train anybody. How many prison riots could there possibly be? that we need to do this again for.
Yeah.
So,
and Sonny makes a comment at one point during the movie. He's like, I got women with women in here that are married with kids. Like, the cops don't. It looks really bad for them if they kill married women with kids. So like, that's not in Attica. It's just a bunch of criminals and guards. Like, no one cares, right? Like,
yeah. So they're like, oh my God, they have people in there that actually matter, is pretty much what the cops would think.
Right. Or that like citizens of New York will care if these people die. So it'll look bad on us as a police force if we just go in there shooting away.
It is wild to look at this as a scenario here where Sonny says multiple times, like, I have control of the situation. I have power here. And like, he has control of more than he wants to have control of. Like, the authorities in the situation are a bunch of kids trying to swing weight around, and Sonny has to actively guide. He has to tightrope walk between guiding them to do the things he wants them to do that won't kill the hostages, won't kill him or Sal, and then also like continuing to keep a grip on the hostages in the situation as they understand it. We don't really get too much of a perspective on how the hostages feel about the cops, do we? Like, they don't really talk too much about what the police are. They're just trying to keep cool in the situation. Mm-hmm. But nobody actively is like, oh, thank goodness the police are here. But they also don't necessarily condemn the presence of law enforcement as being like dangerous to them. They're just like, we just want out. Like, we don't care how. And so it comes down to that interesting tightrope walk of you should really, it should be something that makes the audience think as well. Like, now you get like good guy, bad guy. You can also think about, we've talked about plenty of movies from 50s to 60s where you have like law enforcement come in. Westerns were big of having law enforcement be the good guy with the gun. And here, continuing kind of Serpico's thing, law enforcement is not good. It's not something that's going to give you comfort to be there. That overwhelming presence of law enforcement doesn't make anybody feel more safe in this movie.
No. They clearly escalate the situation far beyond what it needed to be. Again, by maybe just wait till he leaves the bank. If you know he's there, don't announce your presence. Don't fucking call him and tell him you got him dead to rights, you fucking son of a bitch. Like,
it really is the tactic of like a mafia.
Yeah.
They're just like, hey, you fucking mook, you think you can make it out of there alive? You think you could take us on? Like,
it's almost like they want him to know that they're smart enough to figure out that he's in there so quickly, right?
Yeah. They have a lot of ego. Uh-huh.
That's true.
I want to talk a little bit more about Leon, Pacino's, male wife. I think that the dynamic is so interesting. And Chris Sarandon, the actor, was nominated for an Oscar for this. He had never acted in a film before. He was a stage actor, just tried out for the role and, nailed it. And they brought him on. And he just does such an incredible job. But I think that phone conversation between Sonny and Leon is just so fascinating and just such an incredible piece of acting on both of their parts. And again, you kind of you're learning more about Sonny as the film goes on. And, when they bring Leon down, you're kind of sympathetic to Sonny's situation. Like, oh, hey, like his lover's there. Like, that's great. They'll get to be reunited and, potentially get to fly off to Algeria together.
Yeah.
But then, you learn immediately when he finally gets him on the phone that like, hey, this isn't a happy relationship. Sonny is actually super manipulative and doesn't necessarily have Leon's best interests at heart. And, that dynamic is, it feels almost abusive of Sonny toward Leon, where Leon is just trying to get away from him, do anything that he can, and Sonny keeps kind of reinserting himself into Leon's life, and to the point where, he admits to trying to kill himself just to get away from Sonny. He's like, "Why do you think I would want to go with you on a trip to Algeria?" Like, it's just, but all of this plays out, and you just learn so much more about Sonny, and he becomes like such a complex, fascinating character by the end of the film as you're getting these more bits and pieces of information and seeing these very intimate conversations that he's having with different people in his life, his mother and his first wife and Leon and all these different people that just show you new aspects of who Sonny is with all these conversations.
Yeah, and the shots used for that conversation, when we pull into that phone call, they become very intimate. Like, you had shots that are wider, that have the full crowd in them, standing in the background, everybody's watching, hanging on words. Mm-hmm. And at one point, you do just kind of feel like, oh, it's a conversation between Sonny and Leon. And And then towards the end of that conversation, he's like, "Who's fucking listening?"
Yeah.
And it immediately
One of
goes
Sonny's
to all the
stupid
people.
decisions.
Yeah. And it just immediately pans over to those cops. It's just like hard cuts over to them with all the earphones in.
All right, are they gone now? Did they hang up the phone?
Yeah.
Leon's like, yeah, they're gone. Of course, they're just still there listening in.
It's such a difficult, like emotionally draining conversation for both of them. And the way they filmed it, Lumet says, so at the point of filming that scene, Pacino was like already exhausted after a day of filming. And so they shot this one take. I think he was saying that they were running like 2 cameras, and once the film in one of them like ended, they immediately just replaced it with another camera and continued to roll without cutting, letting Pacino just perform the entire scene. And then once they finished, Lumet says to Pacino, "Don't think about it, just go again, action." And then Pacino like almost exhausted, and he has to do it again. And I think that's the take they used, and you can see it how just draining, and like he's sweating, and it's so difficult for him to have this conversation, and that gave such a naturalistic and sort of heartfelt performance.
Yeah, and they filmed I saw the interview too. They filmed his conversation with his first wife and then his conversation with Leon back to back, like all at once. One massive sit down. So he's there for, 15 minutes doing both these phone calls, and then immediately has to do it again. And, I think like you see, like Sonny should be super exhausted at the end of this day, right? This has been like such a trying afternoon, and you really see that coming through, that he is just kind of at his wit's end. He is trying to manage too many things at once, and just is kind of at his breaking point at that point.
There's a clever little character moment when at one point the police are like trying to sneak in from behind, and I think Sonny shoots, right? I think he shoots first.
Yeah.
And there's all this chaos and confusion, and once the negotiator like convinces Sonny to come out and talk to him and like clarify what happened, he like stops for a moment, tucks in his shirt. He's trying to look more presentable and more serious before he goes out, because like he's trying to control the situation, trying to still intimidate the cops, and like try to use the police's attempt to kind of save their reputation, which was probably tarnished after the Attica incident. And he like trying to use it, portray himself as like someone more intimidating and serious than he probably is, and then use that situation of the police like being probably a little more careful not to have another incident soon after the Attica one.
Yeah, he gets that pushback.
Yeah. You mentioned him tucking his shirt in. I think from a costume design standpoint, I love that at the start of the movie, he's wearing like a white dress shirt and he's very put together. And like by the end, it's a hottest day of the year. They've cut the power to the building. There's no AC. By the end, that shirt is yellow.
Yeah.
Just like gotten so sweaty and gross over the course of the movie. They had to have like 20 iterations of that shirt to like get slightly more yellow and gross throughout the film.
That's true. And that also it's a great follow-up to not only Serpico, to show sort of similar themes, similar aspects of New York and America of the time, but also of 12 Angry Men, because it's also shot in one location. And Lumet, like his style is not flashy, but he directs the scene so well that like it is theatrical in that it's a very contained like story in one location, but the actors are very natural, and just that exhaustion and the time goes by, and like everyone just becomes more stressed and more kind of angry and tired, and I feel like it's so well made in 12 Angry Men as well as here.
Yeah, I love that movie. It's so well done. And I think in both cases, like Lumet does, like, he moves the camera to the point where he makes the film super engrossing in both cases. 12 Angry Men, he's a little bit stuck in this room, but he does move the camera around more than you would expect in that type of movie. And in Dog Day Afternoon, there's a lot of tracking shots and stuff, but it's not like a drawing attention to itself tracking shot. It just really feeds the pace of the movie to the point where you kind of don't notice the little directorial flourishes that he's doing, because they just work so well with the film and just pulling you into the story and engrossing you in everything that's going on.
Yeah, this made me think of kind of the, because we did watch High Noon recently. This made me think of a very similar kind of style with regard to how time passes. Like, because a movie can make you feel like weeks or months have gone by, but I feel like it's harder to capture the immediacy of like a day's time. Like, you can lose yourself a little bit and like, okay, well, we're just stretching 24 hours into, we're condensing it into an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that.
It almost feels like real time.
Yeah, it feels like real time in this one. And I was kind of fascinated by that because there's just I think it's all thanks to the performances, that exhaustion that you get and the interactions that continue to happen where they feel repetitive but different each time. Like, he has to go out and he has to talk to the cops, and then he has to go back in and he has to manage the hostages, and like this back and forth kind of ping pong between these two locations leading up to like the end of it. You can just, you feel exhausted as an audience member watching it. By the time that they get into that airport bus, you're like, oh my God, we're going somewhere. Like, everybody's giddy and like we're going on a field trip. And like, even as an audience member, you're like, holy shit, something's going to happen. Like, what the fuck?
There's so many emotions. Like, they're excited, but they're scared, but they're nervous, but they're kind of tense. All of them, the hostages and the bank robbers.
Yeah. That final piece, can we just get into the end, or was there anything else that we missed on the way to this?
Probably I wanted to mention, like, once the FBI agent comes in and then once they check on the hostages, they give a little like hint to Sonny that, we're going to take care of Saul. Don't worry about him. And like, it becomes more clear what their plan is and like how they see the situation. They do see that they can sort of negotiate and find some common ground with Sonny, but Sal, they just see him as someone more kind of unhinged and unknown, and so they are like planning something and how they're gonna deal with this.
Yeah, and we get like Sonny has that, when they have that interaction and he's like, don't worry, we're going to handle Sal. Sonny yells out, like, you think I'm going to sell him out? Like, that kind of thing. But then the moment he goes back inside, Sal's like, what was that about? And he's like, nothing. He just wanted to tell me about like the arrangement of what the car was going to be pulled up. So like, as an audience, we're tipped off to it, but like Sonny's keeping kind of the theatrical performance going, that they're in it together and they're going to, make it out. Everything's going to be fine.
It's also Sonny's fault that the cops view Sal as this dangerous villain, right? Because he uses that to his advantage.
Yeah.
So he can leave the bank and go negotiate with the cops outside and be like, hey, like, I got this fucking crazy guy back here with the hostages. He's going to shoot him if I don't come back in 5 minutes, And so he kind of builds up Sal as this terrifying figure that then leads to the cops treating him as such. And like, we know from their conversations in the bank that Sal's a bit unhinged, right? They're like, he doesn't really know any given minute, it seems like, what he's going to do. And he's said that he's willing to kill these people, but he's such a timid guy, you're not really sure. But he's kind of created
air
into this monster that, he's a more complex character than that, but the cops are just like, oh, he's Sonny's the, reason one, because we've talked to him. They've not talked to Sal. They don't really know much about him, but they're just like, well, he's the crazy guy, so we gotta take him out.
Yeah, and they only ever see, like, also was when Sonny gets tackled outside by Maria's boyfriend and he gets hauled away. Like, the hostages run out real quick to be like, Sal's gonna fucking kill us if he doesn't see Sonny, and like, they just have even more visual evidence that Sal must be the guy that we need to take care of. It's not so much Sonny.
But more than anything, he's just worried about being called a homosexual. He's like,
yeah, that's right. Yes,
that's one of the funnier lines in the movie. Yeah,
you're like, you gotta tell them I'm not.
Tell the TV people, there's not two homosexuals in here. It's just one. I'm not a homosexual.
I love it too because like Sonny's negotiating constantly, and clearly he's like, "Hey, Sal, I was able to get this, was able to get that. Hey, look, I'm on TV, all these things." And then when Sal's like, "Hey, tell him not to do that," Sonny's like, "I don't have control over that." Like, and Sal just buys it. He just believes him. He trusts him.
And then at some point he just tells him like, I talked to the FBI. They said they're going to take care of the TV people. You know, it's just like, okay.
It's like, all right, fine. Yeah.
I do. One other thing that I wanted to mention before we get to the end is my favorite character in the movie is the pizza delivery guy.
Oh, who celebrates?
We're like, Sonny's like, hey, we got some hungry people in here. We need some food. And then Moretti's like, well, you want some pizza? He's like, yeah, sure, fine. And they deliver the pizza, and it's this guy who's probably like 20 years old, and these all in the middle of this news frenzy, all these cameras around him, and gives the pizza to Sonny, and Sonny is like, what's it cost? And the cop's like, it's paid for, dude. And he's like, no, I'll pay, with like the stolen banknotes.
Yeah.
It's funny to me. He's like, where are the marked fives? We got to pay for this pizza. And the pizza guy, not even scared. He's just like, oh my God, I'm on TV, and he's
super excited.
He gives him the 3 pizza boxes, and Sonny goes in, he just starts jumping around for joy. I'm a star.
Yeah.
It's also funny how they ask for a beer, and the
the cup's like, no.
Already, she's like, no, let's keep it.
Yeah.
Soft drinks. We'll give you soft drinks.
Yeah.
Because he's worried. Like, he's worried about that reputation. He doesn't want to endanger the hostages by giving them alcohol, but also he wants to keep it clean for the TV, probably.
Yeah,
probably. Yeah, he also seems to like not really think about it and kind of says yes at the start. I was like, yeah, we can get you some beer. Wait, no beer. We'll get you soft drink. Like,
in like the dog documentary, they talked about how that pizza boy got tipped like $1,100 or something, just giving him whatever bank money.
That's awesome. In the movie, that was all the money in the bank.
Yeah, basically.
At least in the vault, they got more out of the cash registers, but I imagine not too much more.
The whole thing is like a comedy of error, right? Because right off the bat, everything just goes wrong, and the biggest blow is that there's no money. There's almost no money in the bank. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about, before we get to the end as well, Penelope Allen, who just does a fucking stellar job as, Sylvia, one of the lead hostages, basically the head teller. I saw that, like, as a trivia fact, she was like Al Pacino's surrogate mother. Like, she actually took care of him or something prior to this.
He lived with her when he was like an up and coming actor. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
And so like it kind of shows here, and I feel like it plays to the strengths of their dynamic, is like he takes her as a hostage, and she's very caring about like trying to make sure that the cops don't do anything bad, and also that Sonny doesn't do anything bad, and she's trying to handle the situation anytime she's in frame, and she's taking care of like all the other tellers as well. Very much like, hey, you need to be
there's like a
mindful of what we
motherly,
have.
familiar kind of dynamic,
Yeah, and it I don't know, just something between their, like the chemistry of her with the rest of the cast, just it makes her stand out a lot more. And like I think that they have a conversation at one point too where the bank manager loses his fucking cool, and he says some words and he apologizes. And then everybody else is like, what did he say? I don't know what he said. Oh, he said these words. That one lady's like, I have Christian ears.
They are not dumpsters.
Yeah.
And all of them are great. Like all of the bank workers, they're all amazing. Even if they don't have a lot of lines or like a lot of things to do, just like giving a little wave to the cameras in the background and making these little jokes. Yeah, they're all amazing.
Their very casual attitude about being hostages because they've kind of made peace with part of the ride that they're on.
The attitude of the movie toward profanity is kind of hilarious to me. Well, not of the film, but like of the the idea that like, oh, women can't hear talk like that. We have to apologize. And and some of the women don't care, and they're like dropping F-bombs and stuff. But the other, like some of the younger women are doing that, and the older women are like, oh, I just can't believe you would say something like that.
Purple clutching.
One of the funny comedic beats of the film. I think also your point about the characters in the bank, they're just I saw Sidney Lumet say that he basically like he told all of them to just be themselves and to not like try to be the character that was written into the script, because he was like, look, I need I just need you guys to be realistic, right? I don't need you to be specific. You're not really driving any certain plot goals here. Like, I just need you to be very realistic hostages and be yourself, wear your own clothes, come in and do your thing. And like a lot of the improvisation in the script was with the hostages, and they kind of like, improv for a week and got the dialogue to the point where they wanted it as they crafted their own characters for the film, which is, it's a very interesting approach and a nice touch for roles that maybe other directors wouldn't have put that much thought into, that Lumet is really like trying to make sure there's this authenticity driving the film, and it just comes through in every aspect of the movie, but really strongly with those bank employees.
Yeah.
They wanted to respect the screenwriter and not to change the initial plan too much, so they kept the structure. And I think when they rehearsed their roles, they sort of the screenwriter like supervised them, and they improvised their lines, and the screenwriter sort of adjusted it, or like he like gave it a green light, so he was still sort of in control, like playing back and forth with the improvisation. So they wanted to respect both the script, but also give the actors enough room to express themselves and be natural.
Yeah. Let's get to the end here. Let's talk about the bus limousine. Bus. Yeah, the airport limousine, and
we couldn't get a helicopter.
Yeah, they couldn't get a helicopter to land on the building. They already had all their other helicopters.
He's like, you don't want to do that. It's just asphalt up there. It'll just cave in. Like, we have no idea if that's true. But it's much harder to manage a helicopter than it is a
how many
bus.
Times Moretti tries to be like, maybe you could trade me that for all of the women?
Yeah.
Like, maybe all of your hostages would be worth this. Yeah, they get that once the like bus pulls up, the limousine pulls up, we have that very tense moment where Sonny's like, all right, Sal, I'm going to go out. I'm going to check it out and see what's going on. He's walking around it with the limousine driver who we don't know at the time is a cop in disguise.
We don't really know for sure.
Yeah.
But he probably is
later in like a cop uniform. I thought.
He does. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think so. He's like standing next to the FBI guy. He's like, all right, the jig's up. I'll just change back into my regular uniform. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, he's like, you take the flashlight, show me everything. And like Sonny's checking it out. And for the audience as well, you're kind of like, all right, like everything seems legit. He's checked the glove compartments, all these things under the seats. He's checked to see if the seats are bolted on. Like, what do we got? And, then you have like a bit of an exchange there at the end where Lance Henriksen is like, I'm going to drive this vehicle, me, Murphy. And it's like, no. I want that guy to do it. And the limousine driver is like, no way. And they have like a whole back and forth. And it's clearly, there's like a staged sort of hesitance to be like, I don't know. And then the moment that he says like one thing, Sonny's like, never mind. I don't want that guy. I want Murphy. I want Murphy to do it.
It's like, what, you think I'm stupid? Or you fucking cop? Get out of here. And it's like, at least with you, I know what I'm dealing with. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting approach, and it's almost Sonny kind of outsmarting himself, right? Where, I maybe just demand some random person from the crowd instead. I know that like maybe the police wouldn't do that, but maybe try to get somebody who's not a cop driving the bus that the cops gave you, that like surely something is going on here. They have some sort of plan, right? They're not just in good faith driving you to your jet to go to Algeria.
Yeah. And I think the last minute swap speaks to Sonny thinking further on the, hey, we're going to handle Sal conversation. You kind of see that moment where the wheels are turning and he's like, I know what I'm getting if I choose an FBI guy. If he already knew that it was an undercover cop as well, and he went with an undercover cop, the cop would kill both probably. Just one of those like shoot first and then be like, all right, the hostages are safe enough. Like whatever.
That's almost like the Serpico just entered the movie for a moment, and he's like, yeah, I know how the undercover cops are.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and then we get everybody piling in. They get the walk up. They have the big circle with their arms linked, where they're like a hive mind of people trying to get. It's one of those things that I haven't really thought about. I'm just like, how are they going to get to the fucking bus without like being shot? And it's like, oh yeah, that makes the most sense. Just build a hostage shield.
Yeah.
And time your pile into the bus, everybody. But yeah, before it, actual driving starts, you get that moment of just like quiet where everybody's kind of like in the bus and they're all successfully made it in. And you just see the different expressions. There's like elation, there's fear, everybody knows that it's going to be over soon. They don't know how. And they're just kind of like, just let's get it on with, like, let's go. That tension for that entire car ride leading to the airport to just people screaming in the streets, throwing random shit at them. I was so terrified that Sal was going to just like fire his gun randomly, especially because Murphy continues to remind him, hey, remember, put your gun up. You're going to do something bad. If we hit a bump, he keeps telling him again and again to put it up. And that's all part of the ruse at the end of it, which is brilliantly pulled off. But yeah, like that sequence leading up to it, and then at the airport when it's pulled in, you're in the downslope of the film, and it just the movie finally tells you what's going to happen because Murphy flips up that armrest when they're right about to get in the plane, and everybody is you have that sweet moment where they release a hostage for the plane, and it's Maria. Everybody gets to debate it too. It's democratic. Yeah. Like Sonny's like, I don't know who should leave. I'm going to say, Sylvia, why don't you? And she's like, it's Maria. Maria should leave. Go see her boyfriend.
And Maria is happy to leave, but she's also like sad and for Sal, and she's like worried about him being scared to fly, gives him a little.
It's such a human moment of like, Stockholm Syndrome or not, I suppose there's like a bit of that sweet sort of connection of like, hey, even if you're scared, it's okay. Take these like rosary beads and, you'll be fine. You have the protection. Then she says,
but also to quickly interject, like they have this conversation about, I think this is when Sonny's talking to the TV like reporters or something, and they're asking him, why don't you get a job? And they're talking about the economic hardship and the low salaries, and he's like, how much are you making? Asking the tellers. And it's almost like they have sympathy for him because they're probably not making a lot of money. Maybe in another life, in another universe, they wouldn't mind robbing a bank, so they have some understanding of each other.
Yeah. They add complexity to that, talking about it, because you think about everybody kind of can be reductive when it comes to good guy, bad guy, and like you're committing a crime and whatever. But the moment that this bank robbery starts and Sonny's talking about those things, one, they mention that Sonny says that they're both Vietnam veterans. As far as we know, Sonny is. I don't know anything about Sal really, if that's true. But it is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, like the Vietnam War, like that has traumatic impact on it. Also, like veterans notoriously have a hard time getting sustainable work and the benefits that they need. And then on top of that, it's like you work for the bank. He does
request a military funeral if anything happens.
Yeah.
In another incredibly acted scene when he's like dictating his will, considering that he might not make it out alive, and confessing his love for his both wives, and that's also very genuine. And I also wanted to mention like Al Pacino, for being known as this sort of mob guy, he's always playing these like Italian mobsters and stuff. Like I know how John is with Al Pacino, with your policy of not really being excited about these sort of dorm
room poster films.
But I feel like this is so much more than that, and it is somewhat of a brave role for an actor who is known for being this machismo type guy, playing this kind of character. And this is not the only time he's playing a gay character or
Yeah.
You did Cruising with William Friedkin a few years after this. Like he definitely wasn't.
Cruising a few months ago. That was not a very good movie, but
I've heard it's not great. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, kind of a daring role for him as well, but not a very good movie in my opinion.
It is kind of interesting because so like the ending after Sal gets shot in the head point blank. A very accurate shot right to the temple. I'm sure it was nowhere near as clean in real life. And Sonny gets arrested, and there's like this moment, it's a slow motion kind of realization as he's like looking around and surveying the amount of collateral damage, and that there's like very little collateral damage. It's like Sal was killed, and that's pretty much it. Like everything else that could be done is damage to property, or it's taxpayer dollars wasted because the police fucking just did excessive force. But he just has like this just smile on his face. Like he's recognized what he's done is still good. He's made the best of a bad situation, I suppose. And that he's prevented these innocent folks from actually incurring harm or having to be killed or like any of these things. And I think that is in contrast to these dorm room poster films that I always hold up, because they're all about gangsters that get their comeuppance. But like the usual ending of those movies is lost on, I would say, the dorm room poster kind of crowd, where they're much more emphatically like, I love the masculinity of it. I like I want to smoke cigars and call people mook in like a billiard room and make deals, and like
Tony Montana is so cool.
Yeah, God, I want to ski the slopes of cocaine that he does. And like, but that's why I think that like Dog Day Afternoon, I don't think of it as being a dorm room poster film, because the moment that he starts kissing a man or like admits that he has a male bride, that's when I would assume those guys are like, oh, like they just they turn away,
rip off the poster.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, why did I buy this? Like, that's probably being reductive to that crowd. I'm sure that there's a little bit more of humanity where they like, maybe it's introspective. Maybe they make their way to Dog Day Afternoon after they see Scarface, and they're like,
if you have a movie poster on your dorm room wall, John thinks that you're an idiot who only thinks that the machismo aspects of the movies are worth taking away.
No, it's only certain movies.
That's often true.
I think I want to talk a little bit more about Sal's death. I think that moment is so jarring, right? And like you see it coming, because the little trap door on the driver door pops out, and you see the pistol there. And you mentioned the shot. It's like backhand turnaround. You know, like there's he gets him right between the eyes with a revolver. It's like, okay,
back into the left.
But like that moment where he dies, like it feels like you feel so much sympathy for Sal when he is killed. And like I hated that FBI agent who shot him, because he's like using Sal's ignorance against him. You know, he's like, hey Sal, remember, we don't want anything to go wrong here.
Like a child.
Put your gun in the air. And like, oh yeah, all right. And then he just shoots him right in the face. And you know, on the one hand, you feel almost relief for Sal, because there's that scene earlier in the film where Sal and Sonny are talking, and he's like, hey, Sonny, you told me, we agreed that we weren't going to prison. We would kill each other if the cops were going to get us. Like, what are you doing negotiating with them? Like, we need to kill each other now. And, you know, so you get the idea that Sal is kind of wanting this, you know, but it's just it's so upsetting to see him killed. And he, again, just feels like this just innocent soul that is just
especially by the
so
end,
lost in life.
They find a way to really turn him into like a kid. He's like scared of flying. He's overwhelmed. He's all like nervous. And when the agent says, you know, put your gun up, he just like listens to him as if like a kid listens to an adult. Like, oh yeah, right.
Very much like a, you know, put your shoes on where grandma's kind of thing.
Yeah. But it's just so heartbreaking to see his life taken away like that. And it's just such a powerful, abrupt ending to the movie. Like from there, you have like, you know, 60 seconds of, you know, we're arresting Sonny and we're kind of wrapping things up, but it's very abrupt. The movie's pretty much over at that point. And it's just such a whiplash effect. And you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe the movie is over. All of that tension has been building to that moment until Sal is shot in the head. And then it's just like, holy shit. You are breathing a sigh of relief, but very upset and sad at the same time. And then the movie's just over and you're just left to sit with that feeling. And it's just such a powerful way to end it. It feels like kind of the only way that they could have ended the movie with that sequence.
Yeah, and they give you like a very small title, like, you know, he went to prison and did whatever. But like I think the most impactful piece of it, watching Sonny look around and kind of sitting with that feeling, is it's accentuated by the audio, by the ambience, because the jet engines continue to like roar louder and louder. He's being read as Miranda rights, and it just drowns out completely. And so all you're left to do is like think, because it's all static to him at this point. Like everything's over. The noise is going to subside eventually, but here's what you're left with. It's pretty,
a very similar like filmmaking moment to the first Godfather, when Pacino's character Michael is getting ready to shoot that cop in the restaurant. And the noise of the outside of the train and the cars just drowns the scene, and you can just see like his eyes are moving around, like darting around. The audience can see him like being overwhelmed with thoughts, and then he does the move, and then here a very similar moment where the jet engine sound just drowns everything. There's no music, and you can just see like the eyes going back and forth, just thinking about what happened. And very like good, but perhaps not entirely realistic acting, from Pacino, but it's very effective for the audience.
And then you do get one little nice note at the end, and typically when movies do this, I kind of roll my eyes, and they're like, this person is here now, and Sonny served 20 years and blah, is currently serving 20 years and blah blah, like the kind of where they are now title cards at the end of based on a true story movies. I was like, really, you couldn't work that into the film. You have to feel like sometimes it works. I feel like for the most part it doesn't. I thought it was a nice note at the end where they say, Leon had his operation and is currently living as a woman in Brooklyn. And you're like, that's nice. At least Leon was able to get out of that toxic relationship and do what she wanted with her life, and go on to, be who she wanted to be. And so it's a nice little note at the end to kind of wrap up, that character story.
Yeah, honestly, these kind of endings make me want more movies to just end this way now. Instead, we get like a hard cut to like, you have to play one popular song as the credits roll, and it's like, man, I want more movies to start with the credits and then just end and let me sit in that. Like, I think when Beau is Afraid ended was the last time we sat in a theater and we're like, oh shit, like just sitting there in silence.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good ending because like as an audience member, you're watching this movie, and together with the bank robbers, you are like, you're not sure what's going to happen. You're hoping they might make it out, and fly to Algeria or Wyoming. But you don't really know how it's going to end. They're hoping perhaps that, we're actually pulling this off. It's going to happen. And then it doesn't. And that's how it ends. This is what ends the robbery. That's it. One is killed, another one is arrested, and that's your payoff. It's not a happy ending, but that's just the outcome of that robbery.
Yeah. The only other question I kind of have to consider is did either of y'all have thoughts on how would this be different, or like tonally different if it was made, let's say, it doesn't have to be today, but if this was made with like a bunch of oneers, is kind of what I was thinking of. Cause like there's time dilation where like you need to slip between these different points. There's a lot of cuts that are well articulated and put in to kind of ramp up certain interactions, make like the exchanges between the police like even more aggressive when they're yelling at each other. But I was also picturing it like, what would it be like to have a camera person following like Pacino around, to have like that?
Yeah.
I don't know tonally how it would change things, but I was curious if y'all had any thoughts. Like, what would that do? What would you feel?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that like, I don't know that you could make this movie much better than it is. But like that could be an interesting approach where, because the way the movie is structured, you're basically getting everything from Sonny's perspective anyway. If they shifted it to where the camera is kind of following him around and, longer takes more from his point of view, that would have been interesting too. I think the cinematography is very good as it is, but that would definitely be an interesting approach for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I do feel like the environment and the bank is a character in the movie as well, and it is important to like show the surroundings, show how it gets darker. It gets like, even though it's nighttime by the end of the movie, like they're so nervous and so exhausted that they're like more and more dirty and sweaty. And I feel like staging it a little bit more sort of theatrically and in a like a more classical way, I feel like it's almost better.
Yeah.
Because in many ways it is like an ensemble piece, even though it's focused on Pacino's character, but all of the other characters are also very important.
Yeah, you're right. That would probably, doing like a oneer, you have to latch onto one character at a time usually, and that probably would focus it the wrong way onto, this is way more of him holding it up, and we don't know. That seems like it's fitted more for an unreliable narrator kind of story, like Birdman and that kind of stuff. But cool. Was there anything else y'all wanted to touch on?
This is my favorite Al Pacino performance. Do you guys agree? And if not, what's your favorite Pacino performance?
I haven't seen enough Pacino. I still haven't even seen The Godfather. Tolik just spoiled part of it for me.
Haven't.
So, no,
well, you've seen Serpico. You've seen The Irishman. The Irishman is fucking incredible performance.
Yeah.
I absolutely love his first movie, Panic in Needle Park.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I highly recommend it, and if you do guys watch it, I talk to you about it. That's another movie that I believe this was Pacino's first feature film, and again, it's such an like naturalistic look at the New York of that time, the drug problem, such a even probably more so than this movie, forward thinking. Like I was amazed watching it. It shows drug addicts, heroin addicts, and like the movie shows like needles going into skin. And that movie was made just like, I don't know, 10, 15 years after. Sorry, I forgot one thing again here. Yeah. But there was like this code that didn't allow certain things to show in the movie.
Oh, the Hays Code. Yep.
Yeah, this was made just like 15 years after that code was lifted. And such an amazingly like honest and kind of brutal look at the issue of that time. I really love his performance there. He's such a like scumbag in that movie, but he's also like likable and charismatic. I highly recommend it.
Nice.
Interesting. I definitely need to check that out. And Anatole, what's your favorite Sidney Lumet film?
Probably this one. I mean, I've seen only a few, but Dog Day Afternoon. I do love 12 Angry Men, but I feel like this movie is just a little bit more engaging and a little bit more like dynamic, fun to watch. There's more humor. It's not always like, it's not a comedy. There's like dark and tragic moments, but I do get a lot of also entertainment from watching it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also really love Network, and I like that movie. I think is just so prescient and fascinating in how it kind of predicted where America was going. But it's kind of crazy, like his work in the 70s. He started out, 12 Angry Men was his first film in 1957, but then in the early 1970s, he just went on this tear of Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, Network. Like he's just putting out masterpiece after masterpiece.
Did he also make The Verdict?
I'm not sure if that was him or not.
I haven't seen a lot of Lumet's films. Well, my favorite Pacino, I think it's still Serpico. I mean, I love Serpico. I love the way that he talks in Serpico. It's just fun. It's exactly it. Yeah. And just that journey was fascinating. Also, it's kind of like my first young Pacino film, so I'm sure it's one of those never forget your first things, where I'm just like still enamored with it.
He did make The Verdict.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I was thinking like Lumet feels like what Frank Capra is to Schmaltz. Like Lumet feels like he is to social commentary and kind of justice. There's like a bit of, and I mean they probably both align in some senses with like social progression.
Yeah.
But that's what it kind of reminds me of, because Capra. I was imagining too, like, I like to imagine Jimmy Stewart in roles, and if he was in Dog Day Afternoon, I was imagining what he would be like. I was just like, it's just totally different. It would just be this kind of.
I just gotta get some pizzas in here.
Yeah, that's exactly what it would be.
Lumet has this interesting contrast about him. He looks and sounds just like this regular old guy. He doesn't he doesn't have this aura of like a social justice warrior, or like he doesn't use any kind of I mean, he's been dead for a few years, but he never used like this kind of modern language talking about these things. But he does seem to be like compassionate and understanding of these issues. He always has them in his movies, as far as I know.
And I think that's what lends to the timelessness of this story and how it's captured. It comes off as less of just hey, we're making a by the books, like historical recreation of this crazy event that happened, and much more like there's injected commentary in it. There's a lot more of what film is supposed to service. It's not just meant to be an educational recap of something. It is like an engaging piece of art. I'm happy that I got to watch it. This is a great film to bring on the episode, on the podcast for this episode. So, anything else to note?
That's all I got.
Would you, Dixon, would you recommend Dog Day Afternoon?
Absolutely. I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd. I think it's just an incredible story, an incredible piece of filmmaking. Like, everything is done just expertly well in this movie. All the performances are great. The cinematography, the script, it's just, everything is just next level, really, really impressive. And it's just such an engaging film that would highly recommend anybody check it out.
Yeah. Al Pacino's long lost and hopeful grandson. No.
I don't like this movie. It's too boring. Nothing really happens. And I mean, who wants to watch a movie about a couple of gays? Am I right?
Oh my God. Wait, let me go hang my Scarface poster up and call it a day. Oh man. Okay. Well, we have two recommendations of one ironically done. And I would also recommend this movie. Obviously, if we talked a lot longer than we have for some other films here. So there's something powerful about it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Young Pacino just continues to crush it.
Amazing. Amazing acting. Just, like a classic movie.
Yeah.
Classic performance.
Watch it and weep for the man who is now Dunkachino.
And go get that booty sweat and bust a nut.
The Bust a Nut Bar. I have been your host, John Garcia. Joining us, our wonderful guest, my cousin, Anatol. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And then our
Michael Dixon, thanks for putting up with our bullshit.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.